Yeah. Let's make him.
David Corenswet, or better said James Gunn's new Superman, has released yesterday. I am really hyped to see this movie, and especially how the DCU will move forward from now on. So I thought, why not make a sculpture to honor that? Now, the first thing I did was make the base. For that, I used a circular wooden plate and put a piece of clay on top of it. That way, the plate would have the shape of a pedestal. I cut out the clay using a 4 cm PVC pipe to get the diameter right. I wanted to cut out the shape of Superman's logo on it, but I scratched that idea in the future, so that's why I didn't show it. What I did do, however, was add a few lines onto the base. I did that because I had this Fortress of Solitude in mind, and I thought that this could be part of the floor. I then baked it and set it aside. Moving on, I then made a wire skeleton for the figure itself and bent it to an appropriate pose. Once I've chosen the position that I wanted the figure in, I drilled in a hole in the base and then covered the figure with clay.
And without further ado, let's get this onto there.
Now that the clay is on the figure, it's just a matter of giving it the appropriate shape. In a way, it's a blessing and a curse that this Superman suit isn't as muscular as the old one from Henry Cavill. The reason is that creating a highly muscular physique takes more time. However, this also makes it easier to get the details right. It's still demanding, but since the new Superman doesn't have very pronounced muscles, the process is a lot quicker. While at the same time, it's a bit more challenging to accurately capture the shape and definition of the body. This process is a bit annoying, but I get it right, so there's that. So, once the basic shape is basically done, I went ahead and sculpted the torso. Like I said, I don't have to make a highly muscular physique, but you can still somewhat see the basic shape of the muscles underneath the suit. So, the first thing I did was make the rib cage. After that, I added the abs and the chest muscles. This was a bit funny because I had to actually try to make him not look as muscular as he would be if it were a spandex suit. Anyways, I not only had to add the muscle, but also the neck. Anyways, after a lot of trial and error, I got the basic shape right and then went ahead and did the hands. This was a little bit annoying. The reason for that is that I apparently cut the wire inside of the body a bit too short on the arms, so making the hands connect was basically impossible. Usually I first make the palms of the hand and then add the fingers as well as the thumb on the arm, but this time I somehow had to remove the hand and sculpt it outside it. This was a bit challenging because I really had to be careful to not ruin the detail because the clay is really soft. So after a few trials I managed to make the hands. I had to bake them first, but I then glued them back onto the figure. Moving on, it was time to make the head. For that, as always, I used a ball, added a little bit of clay to make the jaw, and then removed the section where the eyes would be, added a nose, the mouth, and then just sculpted away and tried to make it look as accurate as I could to make David Corenswet face. As for the eyes, this time, since it's not an anime figure, I had to poke in 2 holes and add a small clay ball as well as small clay noodles to make the eyelids. For me, it's really not that easy to make heads, especially in that size. Anyways, once I thought I got it right, I put it in the oven, drilled in a hole, glued in a piece of metal wire and glued it on top of the figure, or better said, the neck. I then used a piece of clay to connect the head and the neck. After that, I made the neck muscles. After that, I made the collar and smoothened it out onto the torso of the figure. Now that the basic shape of the suit is done, I started to add the details. For that, I used a variation of thin and thick clay strips and put it on the appropriate places. I first started with the shoulders by using thick clay strips and then worked my way down. But before that, I had to add the sleeves of the arm. For that, I just basically used a thin piece of clay, glued it on top of the forearms and smoothened them out to make them appear one piece. Once that was done, I cut out the sleeves in a triangular shape and added the wrinkles in the elbow section. After that, I continued to make the details on the arms. To add some further detail on the clay strips, I used a clay knife and drew on some lines. And now that the lines on the upper body are done, I went ahead and did the Superman logo on his chest. To make that, I cut out a small piece of clay into the appropriate shape and then glued it on the chest. Once the piece of clay was glued on, I used the same clay knife and pressed in the Superman logo. And once that was done, I continued making the line details on the torso. With that, the torso is done. Which is why I moved on to the underwear. That was pretty simple. I just wrapped a thin piece of clay around the underwear section and then cut the length appropriately. I then followed that up by adding some seam lines. As for the belt, I wrapped yet another clay strip around the body. After wrapping it around, I cut it at an angle and left the middle section a bit free, so that I could add the middle section of the belt. The belt also had some lines, but I did that off cam. Then I added 4 belt loops, 2 in the front and 2 in the back. It's a little bit unnecessary to sculpt things from the back, since you probably won't be able to see it due to the cape, but I did it anyways. And now that the underwear is done, I had to do the exact same thing that I did with the arms and the torso, just for the legs. This was a little bit funny because I literally had to look at the Fortnite model to make sure that the details are right. Making the shoes is a bit difficult when balancing it on one wire, which is why I first had to bake the figure. I then added some thin clay pieces for the details of the shoes, and used some rough sanding paper to make the detail of the shoe sole. Just like I did with the torso and the pants, I added the seams using the exact same clay knife. With that, the shoes are done, but I noticed something that is the case with most of my figures. I didn't like the head. So naturally, I beheaded Superman, made the head again, and then glued it back on top. I know it still doesn't 100% look like David Corenswet, but it's the best I can do. I will get better, I promise. With that out of the way, I continued by making the ears. For that, I used a thin clay noodle to wrap it in a spiral shape on the side of the head and then sculpt it to the appropriate shape. After that, I added some more clay on the top of the head and made the hair. I usually don't like making hair, but this one was fairly simple, which is good. After the basic shape of the hair was done, I used my wooden clay tool and mimicked the direction of the hair by adding lines. And to finish the hair off, I added the iconic curl that is down on the side of the hair from Superman using a thin Cosclay noodle. Now, there is one final thing missing, and that is Superman's cape. And as you can already guess, I used a very big clay sheet to do that. I simply cut out the neck section and then folded it on the sides to add it on the back of the figure. Once the cape was added, I also used my wooden clay tool to make the folds between the connection point and the cape a little bit better. And as I've stated in the beginning of the video, I scratched the idea of making a Superman logo for the base and added some ice crystals to honor the Fortress of Solitude. This would also hide the wire in which Superman is standing on, giving him the appearance that he is flying. Making the ice crystals was a bit funny because I simply had to flatten each side until the edges were sharp. And with that, this sculpting process is finally done. Let's move on to the painting.
I somehow managed to make the cape removable, which is good, so I can paint the backside easier. And yeah, this time I'm trying a new kind of paint. I'm trying Vallejo. It supposedly covers the paint better, so let's see how it goes. But the first thing I will is give it a little bit of white.
Anyways, let's start painting. I started by giving it a white base paint. That way the blue and red and yellow would be more vibrant, which, in my opinion, especially for this figure, is really important. Now, like I said, I first started with blue. I covered every section that needed to be blue with blue. But to make the highlights, I used a blue that was a few shades darker and painted the lines of the figure. It's not that noticeable, but does a really big difference. After that, I painted the belt as well as the few sections of the logo yellow. And I am already noticing that this is going so much faster because I don't need to add 2000 layers of one color just to make the color pop. I am already in love with these colors, and even though it's expensive as fuck, I will paint more with it. So YouTube money better come soon or else I will be broke. Anyways, after that I painted the Superman logo, the trunks and the boots red. The thing is, I somehow forgot to buy red Vallejo paint, and I was also out of my regular red, which kinda sucked. Luckily, somewhere I had a very cheap red lying around and used that because, like I said, I was a little bit under pressure. Good thing that this one covered the white paint quite nicely. The only thing is that it has a weird shine to it. I'm pretty sure dust will stick on it really well, so yeah, we'll have to see about that. After the boots, the trunks and the logo was painted red, I moved on to the cape. On the back side of the cape, I added a small piece of tape to cover the section where the other Superman logo would go. That way it is much easier for me to paint the yellow, which I gave an outline using black Vallejo paint. I then set it aside and moved on to the base. First, similar to the Statue of God, I used a black acrylic wash to cover the round section of the base and then removed it with a tissue to give it more of a rocky effect. Then it was time to make the ice crystals. For that I gave it a white base coat as well as a blue secondary coat. That still wasn't the crystal effect that I desired, so I dry brushed some more white onto it. This brings out the edges of the crystal. Moving back to the figure, I then painted the hands as well as the face. After that, I just had to paint the hair a black-brown color, the eyebrows, as well as the piercing blue eyes. The eyebrows were painted a brownish black color as well, and then it was just a matter of painting the piercing blue eyes. And also, don't forget the pupil. And with that, the final step after the paint dried was to glue on the cape. First, I removed the tape and then used a mixture of hot glue and super glue to glue on the cape. I had to act fast, but luckily I managed. And with that, my Superman figure is finally done. I'm really happy that I managed to make it within 2 weeks. A few days late for the release of the movie, but a win is a win. As I've stated before, the face could be a bit better, but I'll get to there one day. I'm quite certain about that. Now, as I finish editing this video, I have already seen the movie and I must say it is really good. And I am really looking forward to what DC is cooking up in the future. Who knows, maybe that will provide me with a few sculpture ideas. Have you seen the Superman movie already? If you did, you can comment your opinion of the movie down below. I would really appreciate to read your opinion. Also, if you have an idea of what I should do next, comment that down below as well. I'm also really happy that I bought Vallejo paint. I bought a bunch of them in the price range of around 17,000 V-Bucks, so it should last me quite a while. And that way I should be able to make sculptures a bit faster, which is good. Anyways, if you do want to keep up with what I'm doing, I would really suggest that you would follow me on Instagram. I post regular updates there and you won't miss a thing that I'm doing. If you want to check out more of my stuff, you can also check out my channel. If you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe, comment down below, you know the drill. And yeah, I will see you guys next time. But before the video ends, I do have to say that there's one question that I'm asking myself after having seen the movie.
Where's the dog? Where's the dog?